Hey everyone! Hey Sobbers, it's SobbingSobble here, and today I have a very special video concerning one of my favorite cartoons of all time. SpongeBob is one of my favorite cartoons of all time, with its quirky nature, great animation, funny jokes that are concerningly memeable. It's just a fantastic show. You cannot forget how relatable the characters are, and there's lots of great episodes in the series. SpongeBob is celebrating his 20th anniversary, and so far it's looking fantastic. Unfortunately, Steven Hillenburg, the creator of SpongeBob, passed away. So today, I'm going to do two special videos in respects to him. Unfortunately, we have to start with the bad episodes. So today we're going to look at the top 20 worst SpongeBob SquarePants episodes. And to avoid copyright, I'll be using, 2 or 3 clippets of an episode. Sorry. But I'll be able to use images and GIFs just for you to get the picture. So yeah, let's get started, shall we? Number 20 is Slide Whistle Stooges. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick get brand new slide whistles. Although the slide whistles are annoying, at least I can tolerate it. And yeah, they just start playing it all over town. The Bikini Bottom citizens, the Bikini Bottom citizens are annoyed at it. And guess what? Squidward actually decides to get into the fun, and is actually, I don't know. He decides to join himself and goes into some silly antics around the town. The worst part, however, is him driving around in a truck, and he goes down under a cliff and starts falling. When he falls, a huge explosion happens. Because of the citizens being annoyed, they start cheering. What? How are you cheering over some Squidward torture? Patrick and SpongeBob slide sadly, and in the end, he gets the slide whistle stuck in his throat for the rest of his life. And for some reason, SpongeBob and Patrick don't care and start playing the instruments all over the hospital. Just what? This is definitely a messed up Squidward torture episode. Now for number 19 is Squid's Visit. This episode isn't that particularly bad, it's just downright creepy. Seriously, SpongeBob makes a huge replica of Squidward's house. He literally gets every single everything right. It's just, what? That's just creepy, getting every little detail of Squidward's house and just making a huge replica of it that looks exactly alike. It's kind of like a stalker mode sort of thing. It's just creepy. Squidward, of course, enjoys it, which is actually fine, but still, just SpongeBob making a creepy replica of Squidward's house. It's just downright creepy, and I don't like this episode. Worst of all is the ending, where SpongeBob makes a casserole in the house and burns the entire place. Squidward gets enraged by this. Unfortunately, SpongeBob says, "Oh, you can stay at my house for whatever you want until your house comes back." Yup, that sounds like Squidward torture to me. Definitely a terrible ending. Number 18's I'm with Stupid. This one's a surprise because this is actually a pre-movie episode. But it's actually the worst one out of all of them. Patrick invites his parents into his rock. Because of this, he wants SpongeBob to think. He says SpongeBob, "Oh, I want you to act dumb because my parents want you to be dumb." Basically, SpongeBob acts all dumb. I admit SpongeBob acting dumb is pretty funny, but, and yeah, that's, the first half is the only good part. Unfortunately, this is one of the first ever Patrick's a Prick episodes, meaning Patrick has to be a dummy for no reason. In this episode, he just has to be incredibly a bully to SpongeBob just because he was pretending to be dumb. With that said, he says some mean things to SpongeBob. Hell, Patrick's parents get into it. That's the worst part. He just acts like a bully to SpongeBob, and because of that, it gets him mad. So mad that he gets into a temper tantrum and leaves the house. However, there is one quote that I hate from this episode. "Dumb people are always blissfully unaware of how dumb they really are." Wait, what? Turns out in the end, these guys aren't Patrick's parents. And, well, this is definitely a mean-spirited episode. One of the worst ones. One of the worst mean-spirited Patrick's a Prick episodes. I feel so sorry for SpongeBob in this episode. Number 17's out of the picture. I can't even find any pictures of this. It didn't even have any search results except for this, which is kind of dumb. Anyway, this is definitely one of the worst ways to portray Mr. Krabs. He actually finds this picture, and guess what? Oh, I'll give you this. I'll give you money. Like, this guy just comes in, and he's like, oh, try to kill Squidward so you could get some money in this art. And he does that. He tries to kill Squidward in the worst malicious ways possible. Because of that, it earns the 17th spot. Because seriously, Mr. Krabs wants to kill Squidward for money. That's why I hate Mr. Krabs. He'll do anything to get money, and he's just so dumb in this episode. I can't. This is one of the worst modern episodes to date. Hey look, another Patrick's a Prick episode. Number 16 is the card. In this episode, SpongeBob gets a brand new, super rare Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy card. And Patrick decides to share the card. Because, well, SpongeBob trusts Patrick. He decides not to share with it, but what he does, well, it's torture. He decides to bite the card, use it to get a Krabby Patty burger off of a grill. It even puts, I forgot what was in it in the episode, but it was like some brown stuff on it. That's when the card starts to malfunction and SpongeBob gets angry. Oh yeah, I remember, this picture shows it was covered in cheese. Anyway, Patrick just treats the card terribly, and he's just bad at trusting SpongeBob. Like, seriously, SpongeBob, can you trust someone else like Squidward or something? Turns out in the end, it kind of calms things down when Patrick gets 5 Ultra Rare Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy cards. But just him treating this card and making SpongeBob mad just keeps it a spot at number 16. Number 15 is Good Neighbors. Where do I begin with this episode? Squidward is just trying to have a relaxing Sunday until Patrick and SpongeBob starts to become huge idiots in this episode. I don't know why, but they start interrupting him in the worst ways. First, they start an actual cult with Illuminati eyes. Apparently, this doesn't help Squidward at all. They also miss his pedicure, and that kind of gets me a little mad. He's just trying to have a relaxing Sunday, but Patrick and SpongeBob just want to ruin it. That's when the entire tiki house of Squidward turns into a huge robot. A huge robot. It destructs the entire city of Bikini Bottom. Because of that, Squidward must have community service on Sundays, his most relaxing day, with Patrick and SpongeBob. He did not do nothing. Patrick and SpongeBob destroyed the city, not Squidward. Like I said, Squidward was just trying to have a relaxing Sunday, and now he cannot have any good Sundays because of SpongeBob and Patrick trying to destruct the entire city of Bikini Bottom. That annoys me. That really annoys me. Number 14 is Face Freeze. This image explains it all. Mr. Krabs tells them not to make any silly faces or else they get the face freeze. Unfortunately, because they are idiots in this episode, Patrick and SpongeBob make some incredibly creepy faces that I can't even show to you guys except for these two. Basically, they sleep with these two faces, and turns out they got the face freeze. Unfortunately, they can't get themselves to fix their faces back to normal, so they call Sandy, and this is their result. Oh my god, what the hell is that? Apparently, Patrick and SpongeBob try to hide their faces from Mr. Krabs. Apparently, he rolls himself up like a burrito. Mr. Krabs feels suspicious and finds this ugly-ass face. That makes Mr. Krabs laugh and gets this ugly face. Squidward comes in and starts laughing too, and gets this really hideous face, and that's how the episode ends. It's just pointless. Disgusting, frightening, and pointless. That's how bad this episode is. Number 13 is SpongeBob, You're Fired. I forgot to mention a rule here. No TV movies such as Atlantic, SquarePants, or Truth or Square will not be on this list. This is not considered as a TV movie special, so it is eligible. In this episode, Mr. Krabs fires SpongeBob because of a nickel. A freaking nickel. That's how SpongeBob got fired. Because of one nickel. Mr. Krabs should get fired because of how greedy he is. SpongeBob gets depression, and this leads to some filler scenes, especially with Patrick in them. It's just dumb. Turns out with the visit with Sandy, SpongeBob gets an idea that he must work with any other jobs outside the Krusty Krab. He works in a Chinese store, a hot dog store, a taco store, and he gets fired from all those stores too. Turns out Squidward, which surprisingly he could fight, defeats all of them and brings them back to the Krusty Krab, and SpongeBob gets rehired. Meaning that this is the most pointless episode in SpongeBob history. We all knew SpongeBob was going to get rehired in this episode. There's multiple episodes where SpongeBob gets fired, so why is this one even necessary? And that he gets fired by a nickel? Wow. Number 12 is the worst modern episode of all time, Ink Lemonade. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick get a lemonade stand. That sounds familiar. I wonder what that is from. Bubble stand? And apparently they're not getting that much money. Apparently, to make their sales better and the lemonade better is by scaring Squidward, which we learn that he squirts ink on his nose. That's a continuity error. You guys remember in SpongeBob Sponge Out of Water where Squidward inks and it's coming out of his tentacles on his feet, not on his nose? Patrick tries his best to scare Squidward, and all these ways are horrendous, especially when he shows his insides. It's bloody and gory and just downright disgusting. This is definitely Squidward torture at its all-time low. He's just getting tortured for nothing but lemonade! In the end, the people learn how the lemonade was made by Squidward's nose, and they leave. It turns out SpongeBob and Patrick were going on the cookie business, and it's spider cookies, as we get this most scariest moment in a modern SpongeBob episode. This image. Oh my god, this episode is just Squidward torture at its worst. And this is not the worst Squidward torture episode. We'll get to that in a minute. And in a minute we mean right now, with number 11 being Boat Buddies. In this episode, Squidward runs over a stop sign, leading him to boating school. Apparently, predictably, SpongeBob's there, and he must have his most torturous episode ever. Seriously. Not to mention, SpongeBob is incredibly creepy and annoying in this episode. He just feels like a stalker at that one point where he's just staring at Squidward with this face, and he's like, it's just downright creepy. He gets beaten up by this guy who also has the same socks and shoes as SpongeBob, meaning that he is fully cast all over his body. Unfortunately, he cannot get the pencil, and that's when he fails his test. Unfortunately, that means he must stay with SpongeBob at boarding school by God knows how. That means, this episode's the worst Squidward torture porn. I hate it. Number 10's To Love a Patty. SpongeBob makes the perfect Krabby Patty and takes love to a whole new level with this one. He treats this Krabby Patty like his girlfriend. Yes, this is a Krabby Patty fetish episode. Seriously, like, treating your Krabby Patty as your girlfriend is just creepy, like falling in love with food. I heard people say, I fell in love with a cheeseburger. But this just takes it to a whole new level. Not to mention, he tries to defend the Krabby Patty as much as he can, leading to him killing scallops, aka the birds in this universe. Seriously, that's just dumb. One of them could have been Junior from Rockabye Bivol, one of my favorite episodes, by the way. This is just disturbing and just killing scallops for a goddamn Krabby Patty. Unfortunately, SpongeBob must eat the Krabby Patty, which leads to the most ugliest close-ups of a Krabby Patty. I am never eating a cheeseburger ever again. Of course he eats it, and that's how the episode ends. This episode was just creepy. Number 9, Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy. This is a ripoff of Imitation Crabs, which basically Patrick must steal the fur coat of Sandy to get the Krabby Patty secret formula, like how he made a robot of Mr. Krabs. Imitation Krabs is one of my favorite episodes, so I'm confused why they ripped it off with this piece of crap. Sandy in the cloak is just ugly, but we'll get to Sandy in a little bit. Here we have Plankton. They purposely made all the characters dumb in this episode, like seriously. At one point, Plankton was hopping around on the fur pelt, and Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob literally find him. They literally just saw him bouncing around in the pelt, and they just act like idiots, like they never saw it. And also, what the hell's with the fur coat? It's just creepy. I know I said creepy in this episode a lot, but yeah. Meanwhile, Sandy tries to look for the guy who stole her fur coat. Turns out she gets called by a naked mule and gets stuff thrown at her. Sandy does not deserve this. She's one of my favorite characters, and just treating her like a douchebag is just, ugh. Sandy's punishments is why I hate the episode, and also one of the worst endings SpongeBob has ever been on. In the end, Sandy catches the culprit, which is Plankton, and traps him in mustard. Sure, the scene where Plankton is trapped in mustard was pretty hilarious, but this is what happens next.
Thank goodness you're here. Take the sicko away!
Actually, we're referring to you, ma'am. Public nudity is against the law in this county. But don't fret. You'll look just fine in prison orange.
So, let me get this straight. Public identity is illegal in the Bikini Bottom, but being a half dressed like the citizen fish is being illegal? Seriously, she's just in a bra. What the hell? That's a dumb ending. Number 8's Demolition Doofus. In this episode, SpongeBob failed his boating license again. This time, permanently deflating Mrs. Puff. In the hospital, he just doesn't care. It makes a terrible, insulting joke. Sorry if that was in low quality, but that's the only Demolition Doofus video I found on YouTube. So yeah. If you hadn't heard, SpongeBob said that from now on, he'll call Mrs. Puff, Mrs. Puff. That's just insulting to someone who's already crippled. This leads Mrs. Puff to get incredibly psycho and beat up SpongeBob. And then, Demolition Derby people just show up, and that's when Mrs. Puff decides to plot her plan to bring SpongeBob to the Demolition Derby to kill him. Yep, that's right. I'll admit SpongeBob was good in the Demolition Derby, but this is just terrible. Planning to kill your own student? What? Well, because of SpongeBob winning the Demolition Derby, Mrs. Puff decides to kill him herself, leading to a wild chase in the Bikini Bottom. Turns out in the end, she just puffs back up, meaning that it was just an incredibly pointless episode, but still, trying to kill your own student? Number 7 is the Splinter. In this episode, SpongeBob gets a splinter, and, well, Squidward tattles on SpongeBob and tells him that he's going to tell Mr. Krabs, or else, I don't know, this episode's just gross, and the plot was just downright unfocused. Okay, so Squidward tells SpongeBob that he's going to tell Mr. Krabs that he has a splinter, and that will get him have no job or something. This would have been a pretty okay episode if it wasn't for props to the creators who tried to gross us out with these close-ups, but this is just graphic and just pure out disgusting. And guess what SpongeBob decides to call to help? Dr. Patrick. Yep, Addison Patrick's a prick episode in here. So basically, he first decides to he decides to hit the splinter wood with a hammer, which gets it worse. And then it starts to swell up. And Patrick's like, there appears to be a little bit of swelling. And puts garbage in it, which makes it even worse. Apparently, Mr. Krabs gets suspicious and SpongeBob must show his splinter. Oh my god, what the hell is that? This was my reaction when I saw this. Seriously, this belongs to a Ren and Stimpy episode. Well, Ren and Stimpy is fantastic, but this episode, it belongs in the adult party cartoon. Mr. Krabs gets rid of it, and guess what happens? He gets pus. Disgusting ass episode. Never want to see it again. Number 6 is Stuck in the Ringer. SpongeBob falls on a bar of soap and gets stuck in a ringer. He calls Patrick the most trustworthy person in the world, and he puts forever glue in it, which makes him stay in the ringer forever. Seriously, Patrick, what the hell is wrong with you? You're really dumb. Why in the post-movie episodes you're super dumb? Because he's permanently stuck in the ringer, SpongeBob has to struggle his life with the ringer, and just makes things worse. He just gets fired, and, well, Patrick decides to help him by, well, bringing him to the Goofy Goober to eat ice cream, but he cannot get the ice cream. Like, SpongeBob cannot enjoy ice cream because it's stuck on his throat. After a torturous carnival glove world adventure, SpongeBob gets injured a lot there, with getting hit with a ball, flying off of a teacup ride. That's when he gets, and Patrick's just having a good time. That's when SpongeBob yells at him because he basically got him stuck in the ringer. That's when the townsfish show up and says that he has no heart. Patrick done this, not SpongeBob. You should not be mean to my favorite SpongeBob characters. The townsfish were the main problem here. But the worst part here was the ending, where SpongeBob just gets depressed, like in SpongeBob You're Fired, where he gets a gray beard. However, he starts crying, and that's how he gets rid of the ringer. And the moral is,
I guess crying does solve your problems after all.
just fuck this moral. And when you thought the townsfish could get even worse, number 5 is Little Yellow Book. In this episode, Squidward finds SpongeBob's diary and secretly reads it to every townsfish, even Patrick. Apparently, some of these secrets are that he likes to dance around in his underwear, he calls his clarinet Fifi, I'm getting terrible 6ix9ine flashbacks, and dancing around like a chicken every time he sees Platt, which inspired the Great Chicken SpongeBob meme, which is the only good part of the episode. Fortunately, the townsfish just act like bitches. Basically, when they see SpongeBob crying out, when they notice that he's reading his diary, the townsfish just neglect him and just be mean to him, although they already read his diary. Just what? All the townsfish, even the My Leg guy over there, are just being mean to SpongeBob. And, they hate Squidward so much that they put him in one of those wood thingies, and apparently everyone starts throwing tomatoes at him, even Patrick. And, well, SpongeBob said that was only his work diary, and he's glad that he never saw his secret diary. And unfortunately, Squidward steals it and reads it, making everyone rampage. If you thought Stuck in the Ringer was a bad way of insulting SpongeBob and making fun of him, this is one of the most mean-spirited episodes in the show. I'm happy Squidward got thrown with tomatoes. This sucks. Pet Sitter Pat at number 4. In this episode, SpongeBob goes to visit Grandma for his birthday, and of course, he calls Patrick his most trustworthy person to take care of Gary. What does he do? Animal abuse! He eats all his food, gives Gary a bath in the sink, and put all of his food in there, and tells him not to eat it, tries to burn him with a flamethrower, and drown the entire house. Turns out SpongeBob gets concerned about this, and then he just basically goes into his pineapple, and he finds this. What? After all that torture, they're just friends now? That does not make any sense. If you ever want a babysitter, don't call fucking Patrick. We're at the top 3 now with yours, mine, and mine. The Krusty Krab has a brand new Happy Meal, and each contains a cute little toy. Of course, SpongeBob buys this toy, and he decides to share with Patrick. Yep, this is the worst Patrick's a Prick episode. He decides to be shellfish for the entire episode and not share it. Basically, SpongeBob tries to touch it, and he's like, no touchy, no touchy. What? What? Patrick is so selfish in this episode. Every time he tries to be selfish in this episode, it's just terrible. Basically, SpongeBob must get a card in order for him to enter Patrick's house the next morning, and then this results into like an ultimate fight, like an ultimate rolling fight around subways and towns and streets. And Patrick had enough and eats the goddamn toy. Of course, this upsets SpongeBob. Luckily, Mr. Krabs finds this out and instantly, and well, he gives him 2 of the Krabby Patty toys, which would be okay, would be the good ending. Like, Patrick would have apologized to SpongeBob, but we got the worst ending ever.
Patrick, that's my money.
Have you learned nothing about sharing?
All this time, Patrick has not learned nothing? This angers me. This is the worst Patrick's a Prick episode. You all saw it coming at number 2, One Course Meal. In this episode, we learn that Plankton's afraid of whales. Strange, because in real life, whales eat plankton in real life. You know what else they eat? Crabs! What? So, in order for Plankton to not steal the secret formula, Mr. Krabs disguises himself as his daughter Pearl to scare the living hell out of him. This scares Plankton so much that he has horrible nightmares, turned to a freaky man with untrimmed fingernails and long hair and beard, and him committing suicide. And you know how SpongeBob does this? They treat it as a joke! What does Mr. Krabs do when he is responded by this? Laughs! What? In the end, Mr. Krabs wins! Just Mr. Krabs trying to scare Plankton into suicide? What? I even thought I hated this episode as a little kid. This is the first ever episode of SpongeBob that I've hated as a kid, and from now on, I'll never watch it because they treat suicide as a joke. Suicide is not funny, okay? So, what can be worse than this? A Pal for Gary, the second worst TV episode. In this episode, SpongeBob thinks Gary is lonely, although Gary's actually fine with his privacy watching his cowboy show. So he goes to buy another pet by this creepy lady, and just steals the pet without even asking, while the lady's just telling him, oh, you should keep this pet away from other pets. Just what? He just steals without permission. That's way out of character for him. Anyway, he gets him the new pet for Gary and names it Puffy Fluffy. So Gary must share with Puffy Fluffy, and Puffy Fluffy tries her best, to torture the poor animal, eating all its food and stuff, yada yada yada. It turns into this horrifying monster and tries to eat Gary. Seriously, Gary has been tortured by Patrick, not this horror movie looking thing. Meanwhile, SpongeBob thinks Gary is bullying Puffy Fluffy, while Puffy Fluffy is actually bullying Gary. What? You're just trying to be mean to him? Which leads to the worst SpongeBob moment yet.
Gary! You put Bucky down right now. Bad boy, Gary. Bad boy. Bad, Gary.
SpongeBob! What? So basically he's accusing Gary of bullying Puffy Fluffy, while the action and mayhem is right in his face. Well, basically he gets eaten too, thank God, but Gary just escapes and hits Puffy Fluffy with his Indiana Jones moves. Unfortunately, SpongeBob never trusts Gary to be alone and brings him to the Krusty Krab to work. That is the second worst ending of SpongeBob outside of yours, mine, and mine. Just Gary wanted his time alone watching some cowboy movies. Just what? Who wrote this piece of crap? Writers: Casey Alexander, Zeus Curvis, and Richard Purcell. Wait a second, one of them wrote the worst cartoon episode of all time. Oh, hell no! Because of SpongeBob in this for some reason, he's way out of character. Because of this, and everything that happens here, except for the way SpongeBob says enchiladas, this is the worst SpongeBob episode ever. SpongeBob could be a doozy at times, but overall, it's actually one of my favorite cartoons with some memorable moments, including this one.
You took my only food! Now I'm gonna starve!
This will always be a piece of my childhood, and I love it. Thanks for enjoying this video. Hope you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. This has been the SobbingSobble. Peace.